How are you going to use AI to eliminate all my employees? I was one of the senior designer and team members for Universal Creative and was part of the teams that brought together Transformers, Rocket, Revenge of the Mummy, and others.
Hello, my name is Jason Reichl, and you're listening to Risk Management Brick by Brick. I'm fascinated with people who are helping build and maintain the physical world around us. On each episode of this podcast, we'll dive in with a risk manager, speak to them about how technology plays a role in this process.
Welcome to another episode of Brick by Brick. I'm Jason Reichl here at IAPA, coming from the show floor. Thank you for joining me, Louis. Nice to meet you.
Thanks, Jason, for having me.
Why don't you give a little 30-second background for the audience?
I own and operate Raven Sun Creative, which is an experiential design and consulting agency working around the world. We've been blessed to work with owners like Universal Studios, Lamborghini, Toho Studios in this space. And prior to starting my company 14 years ago, I was one of the senior designer and team members for Universal Creative and was part of the teams that brought together Transformers, Rocket, Revenge of the Mummy, and others, Universal Studios Japan.
Awesome.
And really blessed and fortunate to be in our space.
Yeah, very, very cool. You know, one of the things that I wanted to talk about is what's facing the amusement park industry from an operational standpoint, from a risk standpoint. So my first questions are really around physical experiences. Where is transformation happening? Is it in design, immersive tech, operational integration? Where are we seeing the most transformation, the most technology coming into play, and where is it working and where is it not working?
Well, I would say it's a twofold answer. So from a risk standpoint, I would say one of the largest risks to the industry is perhaps the challenge that shareholder value with publicly traded companies is putting on, and the lack of new radical innovation. We need more research and development. As when I was a younger person, this was like the space industry, in terms of really forward-looking, like the nature of animatronics, the nature of interactives, the nature of lighting technology, ride technology. I think that's softened a bit and is challenging, especially as AI comes into this world and kind of starts to change what the nature of creative development and manifestation is, as well as personalization. I think in terms of where the innovation is happening in this space is the ability to create ultra-personalized, multi-branching experiences for groups and families. And we're just at the beginning of I keep telling everyone in terms of like AI, we're at the dial-up phase of what the possibilities are in this space.
I love that analogy. That's great. Just double clicking on that, how is guest expectation changing that paradigm? So there's the business model as shareholders. You can't take as big a risk because you need to return maybe in a more consistent manner. So that reduces risk. What's the pressure being put on from the guest experience perspective?
Well, again, twofold answer. I think what we see, at least in the short term right now, is that the push of the shareholder valuation, situation is trying to create a higher per cap on the guest, but also at the same time, at least in the current environment, is reducing perks and elements in terms of valuation that the guest is getting for the value of their dollar.
Because the guest don't only knows how to evaluate value based on previous models, essentially.
Correct. So in many ways, I think what you see is you're getting less but paying more for it to some degree. And it depends on owner, it depends on property, it depends on where we're at regionally in the world, because we work in China, the Middle East, Europe, and North America. So it's a little different in each market, how that's manifesting. But I think, at least in the North American market, there are some challenges where we see a transition from a per cap standpoint, where some of the larger owners are moving more toward a luxury pricing model opportunity, and some mass market may be reduced in that process. And the other challenge you'll see is one of the owners is facing some financial challenge at the moment, is the way I'll put it. And so they've tried to reduce the offering to the guest while they're trying to resolve their financial problem. And in our industry, publicly traded entities, they struggle in that way. Most don't recover that way. We work better in a challenge format and a private ownership scenario to recover from that. But the answer, in truth, I think, is about more innovation and more research and development and making a better offering, because our industry really flourishes in that standpoint. And I would add to that, this industry is unable to, in truth, like Wall Street is seeking, be a perpetual 20% growth inevitably. It's just not where the market is at.
A lot of these experiences are landlocked in a way, so you can only do a certain amount of it.
But this industry is really stable at generating, 20, 30% interest indefinitely. So it's really a great market that has stability and long value. but it's not one that can scale infinitely.
Yeah, and asset reuse and a bunch of other things like that, which is great. Let's do, just so the audience can give a firm example here. Can you give me an example of a project where they went from a traditional kind of model that you might use to a more digitally focused model, or something that you've been working on? I'm just kind of interested in who's someone doing it right, and then how is that different than the previous models?
Well, I would say, when we look at, for instance, the Khufu project, that's a museum project, not a theme park project.
Which is really popular. A lot of museums are getting a
Correct,
lot.
correct. So what I would say, I think that's when we look at that space. Like VR has been a challenging technology in the LBE space for a long time. But this is the first kind of transcendent, really well received, high capacity experience where museums have been able to create a platform, and I believe that's done with Xcurio, the company Xcurio.
Yep.
Has broken the mold on we can have 150 people simultaneously in a VR experience. It's a positive experience. It's a shared experience. I think that's really right now, if we look at VR has struggled in this space, and they've really seemed to kind of find the sweet spot and deliver something that's also, financially very viable and popular at the moment. And
Right.
for museums is a new technology that's really kind of bringing people in that might not have been involved before.
Having been in this industry for so long, and this is not, it's tangentially related, but just because I'm curious, how do you feel about trends? Are you someone who is laser focused on trends? Do you feel like for like the VR stuff, like were you very early on going, hey, this is not really up leveling and transcending the experience, and so it's a detriment? Like, how do you evaluate different things like the AI in the market?
I think it would be fair to say that most folks in the industry see me as technology agnostic, but technology forward. So I'm always at the edge of trying to explore what's coming. So like my talk on Monday was about AI's impact on the entire entertainment ecosystem, but also looking at the trends beyond that, such as dexterous robotics, which will be a huge labor impact in 5 to 10 years. I don't believe that technology is the story to delivering our experiences to the guests. I mean, in truth, the technology should be invisible. But as career people, as business owners, and as an industry, you really need to be aware of what's happening technologically because it affects all of our businesses equally.
I love that. So I'm guessing because people aren't investing in innovation, it's because of development costs getting more expensive, talent getting more expensive. Can you just kind of go into why are we not investing? I know it's the shareholder thing, but
Well, I mean, I think it's more than that. I think sometimes there's a reluctance to take a risk right now, where we were a very pro-risk oriented industry before, as the market is, especially in North America and Europe, is maturing. So it's changing. It's not scaling any longer. One of the challenges we'll see is I see a reliance on what I call a detergent mentality now, which is it's the same thing new with one new feature. Instead
it's the iPhone example.
Correct. And so it's not really pushing the envelope in any way. It's maintaining the status quo with something that we can market, or even slightly market.
Is it because the market understands that, so just adding a new feature is enough of a gimmick? Is that how they're positioning it in the space?
I think from the supplier side, yes. From the guest side, I think they want more. There was an expectation that we need to do more with that, and so the reflection of that you see to some degrees are products like Disney has done with Galaxy's Edge, that you see with the new Epic Park that's open.
Let's talk about Epic for just a second. So is that an example of forward momentum in the industry from your perspective?
From an environmental standpoint, yes, at least in North America. So I would say the peak of our art form in experiential entertainment is Disney Sea in Tokyo.
Right, yeah.
Right? That's really the peak theme park in terms of finish and whatnot. I would say Epic now has elevated the bar that where we see at Animal Kingdom, they did Avatar Land, and in Hollywood Studios, Galaxy's Edge. Epic is really a balanced approach to all of the lands being delivered at that high level of fidelity. And that's the first example of the entire park at that level of fidelity in the North American market.
And that way they've taken maybe safer ride mechanics and put an environment around it that's elevated the environment.
Well, I think there are a couple of attractions there where, and being a former Universal Creative member.
I'm not trying to get you to talk bad or good about Universal.
I just want, I think there's a pride in what they've done at Epic is there are 2 ride systems that are really the second generation of already exciting systems. So the Monsters ride, Monsters Unchained, level 2.0 of what they had done with Harry Potter, and what they've done, and it's having worked on Transformers, which was 2.0 of Spider-Man,
Yeah.
what they've done with Ministry of Magic is essentially a 3.0
Yeah,
version
that's what they seem to be doing pretty well.
of advancing that technology. So they did a great environmental growth of the brand and the company. And those two rides, I think, are the marquee ride attractions within that park that they really wanted to try and take those systems further.
Going back to AI and the creative process, what must remain human by design from your perspective? Where are you saying this is humans? We kind of touched on it a little bit a second ago, but can you elaborate?
Well, I mean, I think, and I own a creative studio. I mean, I think it's AI is a remarkable new set of tools. Now, mind you, I started in the industry as my degree is in stone carving, painting, and in casting bronze. So I come from a
Material world,
ultra analog, world, and that's how I entered the industry was as a concrete sculptor and a sculptor here. And then I started my business 14 years ago, and we're a global digital design studio, working all over the world. To me, this is just the next set of tools that gives us the ability to express ourselves in a different way and at a different price point. Before, I couldn't afford to, hire an entire film crew. Now we can do pre-visualization at a high level of fidelity and content and tell stories we want to pitch people at a level we could never afford to do before. So I'm excited about that. It is not a unicorn that you can just push the button and it'll do anything you want. It'll be great material. Right. There are great artists working in AI, which a lot of people aren't aware of at the moment. And, anytime when you look at like what Steven Spielberg or James Cameron or Ray Harryhausen, all those guys took the tools of their day to tell their story at the most advanced level. My opinion is these tools are available to us to tell the greatest stories, and that's how we should deploy it, not ignore them.
I love that. When you're working with businesses and you guys might be using AI in your projects, the pitching is a good example. In tech, we're using AI prototyping, So as an example, you might have had in the past in tech, everyone get around and go, okay, this is the idea. Let's do a prototype of MVP of this. Now you can actually create 3 MVPs quickly, get them in the hands of someone and have them experience that. So the confidence going into the real build phase is much higher, so that's what I've experienced. What is the reaction and response from your customers as you guys are deploying these techniques? Are they using them now successfully?
Well, I mean,
are you showing them the world?
On the C-suite side, I get a lot of interest requests that they give me. I get 3 questions always in every C-suite I go to now. The first 3 questions are, how do you use AI? How are you going to use AI to do my project faster and cheaper? And how are you going to use AI to eliminate all my employees, which is always an interesting conversation. But I mean, at least from where we're at, it's an iterative tool. It really gives us the ability to explore a lot more options more thoroughly than we could have done before more rapidly.
We're going to go to a section called risky or too risky in a second, where I give you 2 scenarios and you tell me if it's risky or too risky. But before we do that, how are you handling with your employees the impact of AI culturally?
My whole approach is upskilling.
Upskilling.
The term I want to use is time to get fluent. We really need to learn, just like Photoshop, we need to learn these tools.
Like a new material comes out and you're going to want to learn that too. Absolutely. Okay, risky or too risky? Let AI generate 100% of early stage concept art.
Too risky.
So how do you de-risk that? How do you do your concept art with
when
your
you say 100%, the perception is just turn the whole concept over to AI. I think what we do is we try to take reference material, hand sketches, and a great prompt, put that together so we're shaping it in an appropriate manner and then using that tool to get more opportunity out of it.
And to spark the creative process, right?
Correct. And people don't realize you can do that now, that you can feed your drawings and ideas in and then manipulate it. It's not just a question of...
So for the audience, the artistry, there are tons of people who are using AI like an artist would use any other material and doing amazing work in it. What about physical prototyping with simulations only versus doing physical prototypes? So just running simulations in a computer.
I think that has value, especially when we talk about like flow dynamics and circulation patterns, and very valuable to have that as a tool. So less risk.
Less risky. These are all kind of, I know I by our conversation, I know what the answers are going to be now, but design immersive spaces using only guest behavior data with no qualitative research.
Too risky.
Too risky, yeah. Let's talk about challenges of running a creative firm in 2025 going into 2026. What are your concerns about running a creative firm going into the next 10 years?
I think that one of the biggest shifts, and this was just spoken about at Adobe Max, was that they believe the entire small studio model may go away in favor of in-house models using AI instead of external agency. I think all large, medium, and small size agency formats will be challenged When I started my company, we worked remotely all over the world, which is an impediment to owners like prior to COVID. I think what we'll see now is the ability for smaller teams to be more nimble. The challenge will be like bonding and delivering. Like, even if I were not to carry the number of employees I do now, I would still carry liability insurance to work in this space like this.
Yeah.
But the construct of the team would work differently. And I envision it's going to work differently as a result of that going forward.
So someone coming into the industry right now, what's a piece of advice you would give them?
I would say become fluent in these AI programs. I would say be a generalist. I mean, I think we're at the beginning of this technology curve. So being a generalist right now is incredibly valuable, but this is a very rapidly changing cycle. Every hour, something new is happening in this space. I think in 3 to 5 years, it'll also become more dynamic where specialists will be critical. I also think there's a great value into going back to analog in many ways. AI and robotics aren't going to get rid of the tradespeople that are necessary to deliver these objects. And there's a huge value in finding your way into having both skill sets. Right now, I think in the industry, there's this sense like they don't touch real material. They don't integrate with it. I think in some ways, AI is going to create an even greater value in some of those traditional skills because it won't be replaced by that technology.
Right. And it potentially will allow them to do that specific skill more often than all the general skills they have to do that is not of value to the project. Man, it was really great having a conversation with you. I really think what you're doing is interesting. I really think that, what we hear a lot, we talk about AI doing things like trying to be proficient. I think it's also very important to hear about AI trying to help creatives bring creative vision to the market better. So I really appreciate that conversation. Thank you so much.
Well, thanks, Jason. It's been a pleasure.
Risk Management Brick by Brick is brought to you by TrustLayer. Find out how TrustLayer manages risk so that the people can build the physical world around us. Head over to TrustLayer.io. And then make sure to subscribe to Risk Management Brick by Brick on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. On behalf of the TrustLayer team, thank you for listening.